I just kept saying it and saying it and saying it that like, just let me go, let me do it, let me, the world's better off without me. Hey everyone, welcome to the Highest Version Podcast. I'm your host Randy, and on this podcast we sit down with people within my network and listen about their stories and how they become the highest version of themselves. However, today I really want to talk about my story and the reason why I created a social media page, why I created a podcast about this topic, and just the whole reason why I'm doing this. And I feel like the event that made me want to do this was when I went through depression myself, and I still deal with mental health issues today, like rumination. Like it's hard for me to let things go in the past, and perfectionism and people pleasing, and those are like the few things mentally that I feel like I'm still working on, but. Mental health is an important thing. It's a true thing. It's as important as taking care of our physical health because, if we're not good up here, how are we supposed to be good with our physical maneuvers and how we go about life and that sort of nature, right? And overall, like, I just want to make mental health or inspire other people to make mental health more of a priority versus, putting it on the back burner, because I know what it's like to do that and how much it really affects me in a negative way longer term, right? And then on top of that, I really want to change the narrative around mental health, therapy, like expressing your feelings, being able to do that. And especially with Asian men, I feel like when I grew up, I didn't really have any models to, let me know it's okay to express my feelings. It's like, no, you gotta remain tough. You gotta work through whatever you're working through and just get through it. Like, there's no point of showing any feelings because it's just weak and vulnerable. And I internalized a lot of my feelings or kept my feelings bottled up, especially when I was in high school. And there would be points where I just blow up, just have a mental breakdown, just cry, and I don't want to do that anymore. I really want to, be in a space and be connected to people where I can just express my feelings, talk about mental health and whatnot. So overall, want to help / inspire people to make mental health more of a priority. And then changing the narrative around Asian men and in letting them know, like, hey, it's okay to express your feelings, whatever they may be. You don't have to be, you don't have to view it as like, oh, like, you're crying all the time, blah, 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 blah. Like, you can just speak your truth, speak how you're really feeling about your friends, and, not be afraid to feel judged about, hey, I'm going through a tough time right now, and that's okay, right? But I want to do that with everyone. And I just feel like with Asian men, that is where an area I feel like needs to be changed. And that narrative needs to be changed. Starting out, I guess my canon event, or where I feel like my mental health issues started, and please, when I say mental health issues, I feel like there's a lack of better term for me to say that. I kind of feel like that is what feels right for me to say. But first of all, I want to say my ethnicity is Lao. And my parents come from Laos, and they immigrated here to the States around the time of, I believe there was a civil war happening in Laos, or around the time of the Vietnam War. Basically, there was turmoil where my parents had to escape. And I remember going on a walk with my dad, and he told me about the crazy story about how he came to the United States, about him having to escape, having to put his body through physical limits to, get to a refugee camp and be sent to the States safely. And then my mom, when I came back from that walk with my dad, I had a conversation with my mom about her story. And keep in mind, like, I'm only 8 years old, right? And with my mom, she told me about her story and, just like the craziest things that she had to go through, like, hearing gunshots, seeing dead people around her, and at a young age. Again, like, they're young, like, I'm less than, 16 at this point, right? And hearing that as an 8-year-old switched something in my mindset where I felt like, I guess that was my event where I felt like I wanted to give back to my parents, right? And I still do, but I think that's where my perfectionism started, where I felt like there's nothing acceptable if it's less than 100. It's not acceptable if it's less than 100 or the top grade. And this is something that my parents didn't say verbatim, but they said, like, you gotta do your best. You gotta, try to be the best as much as you can. And I remember a time in sixth grade. I think this is around the time when I first initially heard their story. And I remember getting a 68 on my math test. Crazy, right? 68 on my math test. And I remember bawling my eyes out because I had to call my dad. I had to tell him what was up. I had to tell him, like, getting signed and all that stuff. And I called my mom first, and I was like, Dad's gonna be so disappointed, blah, blah, blah. And my mom tried to calm me down, saying, like, what did you learn from this? And all that stuff. And just facing my dad to say, like, hey, I pretty much failed the test. And I feel like that's such a core memory of mine because I feel like that's where my perfectionism started. Continuing on top of that is through therapy, I realized with their story that I internalized their trauma of what they saw, what they've been through. And that's a lot to handle as an 8-year-old, right? To vividly put yourself in their shoes when they're talking about these stories and being like, what do I have to complain about? Like, why am I being, there's nothing for me to complain about. Like, they sacrificed everything to give me the life that they wanted. Like, they would love to where I start, but I'm complaining about getting up early or whatever I was complaining about in high school, right? And I felt like that was the first point of suppression, right? If I felt like I was going through a difficult time, I was just like, no, like, your parents went through way worse, right? That comparison of experiences really changed my mind as an 8-year-old. And that's what made me have, like, bad tendencies in high school. Like, my junior year, especially you're getting ready for your college applications, I think all of junior year, every night, or at least during school nights, I only slept 3 hours because I was trying to do things at such a high quality that, like, I had to stay up and do it. Probably poor planning on my end too, but I was also juggling a lot of things at that time, like basketball, student council, all that stuff, right? I grew up in a predominantly white town in Connecticut, and that's a whole different battle in itself in terms of growing up Asian American and being in an environment where you feel like it's not too familiar to you. But anyways, in high school, I also did a lot of people pleasing. Like, I did people's homework, just gave them answers, didn't really like tutor people. Said yes to everything, and I didn't realize how much that burnt me out. Like, and there was other things I was going through on socially, of course, like, being scared to ask out who my crush was or like dating and all that stuff, and having those internal feelings and then going home and you can't really express it, right? You can't, because they're like, why are you worried about dating? You should be worried about your academics. But for me, like, that was part of high school. That was part of the, the social aspect of it, right? Also at this time, my brother, who I love, Chris, if you're listening to this, I love you, man. He I always admired him because he was authentic to himself, no matter what other people said to him. And at that time, his performance was not up to my parents' high expectations, right? So that, because of that, that was put on to me. And I could have decided to, you know, not do what I did, but because I've internalized that trauma, I was like, this is what I have to do. I have to be the best and do the best. And that was just so much pressure, like such internalized pressure to the point where I just kept burning out and breaking. And I just feel like that's where it started. That's where my mental health started to have signs of deteriorating or maybe not as healthy. But now, like, I have such a great relationship with my parents and my brother, and I'm able to tell them, I'm not feeling happy, or I'm going through this or I'm going through that, and I did that through conversations, and I love that, absolutely love that. But I don't think, well, my brother knows, but I don't think my parents really knew how much mentally some things were just so hard for me. And I didn't express it because, again, what am I complaining about when they've escaped war, escaped all that stuff, right? So it kind of put myself and my feelings at a lower level compared to my parents and everybody else, right? Moving on, I'm going to college, and I went to UMass Amherst. Shout out to ZooMass. And this is where the mental health really, really shone, really was present. One of my college years, I made some significant decisions that impacted a lot of people, or I felt like a lot of people. And, it really hurt someone I loved. And I brought in a lot of people, like my friend group and other friends, because I wanted help, but then I was going against what they were saying. And basically, I felt like I was just annoying everyone. Overall, I felt like I really hurt someone someone I love, and that just like broke me, along with other people, being annoyed of what I was doing or maybe the decisions I was making and stuff like that. Again, burdening, Asian American tendency, you don't want to burden people. I also took the identity of the nice guy, so not hurting anybody that I talked to, anybody around me, and I didn't want to do that. So if I did hurt somebody, it crushed me, absolutely crushed me. And with someone that I love, that brings it to a higher degree. So one night, I remember this night vividly. One night I was going to a party, and basically wasn't mentally well, but just like any other college kid would try to drink their problems away. But I was reflecting on like what I was doing, and the hurt that I felt like I just did, right? And I was just, trying to drink my sorrows away, but then I just sat down one time and said I wanted to kill myself. Like, I felt like the world was better off without me. Because of this one thing that I did, this like one few decisions I made and the experiences I was going through, and I was just feeling alone, right? Feeling alone. When you feel alone, you have these more and more thoughts that nobody really needs you in their life, right? And in college, obviously, like, you're in a bubble, so I didn't really think about my family at that time. And I just kept saying it and saying it and saying it, that like, just let me go, let me do it, let me, I'm, the world's better off without me. And luckily, I had friends there at the party and my partner Michelle to be there to make sure I didn't leave that party and do something stupid. And that night changed my life forever. I never in my life at that time felt like I wanted to do harm to myself. And obviously, when you have that first experience, that's tough. It's really, really tough. And and it's a surreal experience. And to any college kid out there going through shit problems, don't try to drink your problems away. It's not gonna help. It's just a void. But till this day, I still somehow cannot get over the decisions that I made, and and it just puts myself in an identity of I'm a bad person, and I'm not enough, and just putting myself in such a bad light. So after that night, I knew I need help. I was actually texting my partner Michelle, and she was like, "You should go to therapy." And I was like, "Yeah, maybe I actually did need to." And I was going through the school, and I still was going through depression at a time, around the time like when COVID hit and stuff like that. And I got help. I got help, and I'm happy I did. But then there was this time where I was graduating and I couldn't use the school resources. I had to use my own insurance resources that, my family. And that was a hard conversation. It was a hard conversation to have with my mom. To say, hey, I'm having these thoughts, and it was a difficult conversation with my mom, but it was the right conversation. And I felt bad because she was blaming on herself that I was in the state that I was in. And I told her like that's not the case, like it's just like some people go through things and they just need help, and this is supposed to help longer, like in a longer term, in long term. And I just kept hearing her saying like, asking like, is there something that I did wrong? And no, like she didn't do anything wrong. It was just how I was processing my emotions. I didn't know how to. I didn't know what depression was or anxiety, and I didn't know what to do. So I needed that professional help. And I'm happy I had that conversation with my mom, and she helped me with finding a therapist. And I still go through therapy till this day. I think, if since like 2019, so I've been in therapy for a bit. Still working on letting go of the past and looking at myself as a different identity and not a bad person because of those mistakes, which I've learned weren't bad at all. Yes, it may have hurt someone, but in the bigger scheme of things, like it wasn't to the catastrophic effect that I thought that was. So overall today, like I've truly gotten better, and I think that's why I feel like I'm okay to be in this space to talk about mental health and what I've been going through, what's been helping me. And at the end of the day, like with mental health, there's always something to work on, and that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to do. Through therapy, I realized that I deserve to be happy. I deserve to be here. I am enough. And now that I think about it, I think I also put more pressure on myself thinking about how I was born. When I was born, I was a premature baby, about a month, and I had a small heart and had to be in the incubator for a while. And I learned that I was also supposed to have another older brother, but he passed away at birth. And I was at also critical health levels where I could have not made it either. So I put that also pressure on myself to be like, hey, like you're here for a reason, right? You are here to do something significant. And I still believe in that, whether that's on a macro level or a micro level. I still want to make impact on my friends, my family. And that's just what I love doing. I love helping where I can. I still deal with perfectionism in the workplace and in my relationships because I want to make everyone happy, but that's something that it's inevitable. You can't make decisions that make everyone happy. It's just not a thing. But my perfectionism, my all or nothing, like, yes, I can do it. And that's a very unhealthy mindset, right? There's gonna be situations where I feel like I have to let people down in order for me to grow. And that's something I have to understand, right? Or even in the workplace, like, hey, like, I have X amount of things on my list. Like, I just need to create a boundary to be like, hey, I'm gonna prioritize these things. Like, can these things wait? Kind of be able to make that conversation to authority. Because I had such a hard time dealing with authority and speaking up for myself, right? Another thing with people pleasing is, sorry, another thing on is with the people pleasing, like, I don't do this as often anymore. I think I've learned to be like, hey, like, these are my boundaries. This is my energy capacity. But I feel like sometimes I may do that because I feel like, again, making everyone happy, making sure everyone's good. But I think at the end of the day, I have to make sure I'm good too. And then I do feel like I have anxiety on a daily basis. Like, I go to the gym specifically because it just calms my nerves down, it calms my anxiety about work and what I'm doing. And it's great because, like, I could get moving, and if I don't work out, like, it's just like there's just so much tension here in my chest and just so much anxiety there. Right now, through therapy, I'm working on letting go of, what happened at that time. And I think it was that decision, or, that experience was such an impactful thing on me, that I felt like I just made it this negative identity on myself that I can't let go. I know I'm not that person anymore, and I was doing what's best at the time. So I'm working on letting go of the past because of my decisions and how what I did affected others. And I saw how much that affected them. And I just put this negative identity on myself, and it's still a part of me. And for some reason, I just can't let it go. And I don't know why. So I'm really trying to figure that out. On top of that, I think it's working on inner child things because of all the things I went through in my childhood and what happened in college, and just being, hey, like, to a young Randy, like, hey, like, you're good, you're okay, like, you did what you thought was best at that time. Like, you don't need to keep hurting yourself over and over again because of what you did. You don't need to beat yourself up again and again, but for some reason, I just cannot let it go. You're grown to be such a beautiful person with this aura of care, and you don't need to keep hurting yourself anymore. And I mean, obviously it's still emotional for me because, again, those events just hurt me so much and put me through my darkest times in my life. And then on top of that was me just having an identity crisis right now. I'm 25 years old, and I'm just trying to figure out who I am, especially with all that is going on with myself mentally. There's a lot of moving parts with, what I want to do in my next chapter, and I feel like I just don't even know how I'm identifying myself. Who, like, in terms of identity, like, yes, like, I still do believe I'm a nice guy, I'm kind, I'm curious mindset, but what else? What else makes me happy? What else makes me feel alive? And not just defining myself by that college part of myself, that college version of myself. So overall, that's my story. That's why I'm doing all this. I want to encourage you guys, if you're going through things internally that you don't know the answers to, and you feel like you don't want to express that to your friends or your family, to please seek out therapy if you are comfortable too. I also want to encourage you guys to talk about your feelings, express your feelings about what you're going through. Find that one person that you can trust that's not going to judge you for what you're going through, or not saying like, hey, like, other people are going through worse, right? not downplaying how you feel, because it's valid in how you feel. And you should be able to own that and to express that without having someone being like, you're crazy, you're overthinking all that stuff, right? Another thing is that I want to encourage men to be okay about talking about your feelings, expressing, what you're going through, and trusting that one friend or whoever, that one person, to talk about what's going on, like, up here. Because if you don't, you keep suppressing those feelings, at one point it's going to blow up, and then you don't know what happens in the next chapter. You don't know what you're going to be thinking going forward. Because me talking about harming myself, I didn't think that was a thought that would ever come to my head. But it did. And that's because I bottled things up. Like, I didn't really, I wasn't real with myself about what I was going through and how I was feeling, because of those traditional ways of keeping things within me, and not burdening people, not being an annoyance to someone else. I want this podcast, I want this social media space to be a safe space where people can express their feelings and what they're going through, and kind of build that community, so that we're all learning together, we're all growing together, whether that's from a mental standpoint, from a physical health standpoint, to really just provide that environment so that we can talk about our struggles. And it's okay to have struggles. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be, there's nothing, I'm not struggling with anything. It's okay to have those struggles and talk about them, because you need to. We are human beings that need this social energy, this social interactions, be part of a tribe. Or else, if we feel ostracized, that's how I felt. If you feel ostracized, you just go into this deep, dark tunnel of negative thoughts that just really hinder your mental health, and honestly derail you from who you may think you are, which is a kind and beautiful soul that should be seen, that should be part of a community. Overall, I'm happy to take you guys on this journey with how I'm becoming the highest version of myself, and how I'm building myself physically, mentally, personality-wise, figuring out post-grad life or identity crisis as a 25-year-old. Just trying to figure out all that stuff in this complicated thing we call life. And I'm happy to bring you guys on this journey. I'm happy to help you through my videos and through my experiences, and I hope you can resonate that, and I hope that inspires you to really do it for you, not for me or for anyone else, for you to build this happy life, or build this overall life that you want. So thank you guys again for tuning in. If anything resonates with you, share, send me a DM about how you felt about this episode on Instagram, or comment down below on YouTube. I hope my stories maybe resonated with you guys and gave you a little perspective about why I'm doing this and who I am as a person. So let's fall in love with the process of getting better every day and becoming the highest version of ourselves. Love you guys.